Welcome, friends. I'm Black Flag Civilian, and even I'm not above restless rifle syndrome. 1 year ago, I introduced you to my lightweight, affordable, special-purpose rifle build, the Civil Defense SPR. The goal was to pack all the benefits of the SPR concept into a sub-10-pound rifle that costs less than $1,000. But after a year of shooting this rifle, sometimes on flat ranges, but more often dynamically out in the woods, I have identified a few issues with the build. I've also made changes to address those issues. And that's exactly what we're talking about today. I'm going to go over what improvements I made to the Civil Defense SPR and why I made them, without abandoning our original goal: SPR capability, sub 10 pounds, sub $1,000. Let's get into it. The biggest change on the Civil Defense SPR is the optic stack. What you're looking at here is entirely new. I traded out the old Athlon 2-12 scope for a Vector Continental 2-12, like I promised to do last year. But more importantly, I also decided to bump the laser aiming module down to the Handguard and use that newly freed up space in the piggyback position for a red dot. In other words, I made this gun much more normal. Let me explain why. The old Athlon scope had turrets the size of skyscrapers, and normally that's not the end of the world. But it really does create an issue if you want to mount something at a 12 o'clock piggyback position. For example, using the old optic stack, the Athlon scope turrets would get in the way of battery swaps on the HFXC laser aiming module. I actually had to take the HFXC off of its mount to swap the battery. I didn't have to do it often, but when I did, the zero would wander. It was just a few MOA, but that's enough to make a difference when you're trying to hit small targets. So I completely rethought the whole thing. As much as I like to experiment with different setups, the result here is a much more conventional SPR optic setup. If anything, the interesting thing here is how much capability and glass quality you can get for around $800 these days. Hey fam, BFC here for the first of 2 video drop-ins. I feel like I didn't make this clear enough just now. This entire scope stack, including the mount, is about $800 in total. You can find the scope itself routinely for under $500, the red dot for around $2, and the primary arms SLX mount for just a little over $100. Honestly, this optic stack deserves its own video. Anyway, let's get back to scopes. So what is different about the 2 scopes? The Athlon has a great reticle. It packs a lot of utility into a relatively simple reticle design. It's made to thrive in short to mid-range dynamic environment without hitting the end user with a bunch of unnecessary detail. The Vector 2-12, by contrast, has a more long-range focused Christmas tree reticle. And as far as Christmas tree reticles go, this one's actually doing something really smart. It keeps the Christmas tree details quite thin, so it almost disappears around 2x. This creates a sort of old-school, simple crosshairs look at 2x. And then as you zoom up to the upper magnification levels, those Christmas tree elements expand and become useful again. Setting aside the height, the Athlon turrets were also super clicky, with zero slop. And that might sound good, but in practice, I didn't like it. With the Athlon turrets, as soon as you hit the required pressure to click the turret, it would move fast and click 3 or 4 times. In my opinion, a tiny bit of slop like you have here with the Vector helps you anticipate the click. And this makes it easier to keep your head down and make adjustments simply by counting clicks, without raising your head and looking at the turret at all. And admittedly, I'm burying the lead here, but the Vector Continental has incredible glass quality for a sub $500 scope. Seriously, it's phenomenal. The scope reviewer, C-Does, who is excellent by the way, came to the conclusion that these Vector Continental scopes are made in the same place with nearly identical specifications as the Bushnell Match Pro ED line, which are sold at a much higher price point. So, overall, I'm extremely happy with my decision to swap the Athlon 2-12 for the Vector Continental 2-12. The next part of the optic stack that we gotta discuss is the addition of a reflex sight. I'll get more into this later, but mounting the lamb above the scope threw off the balance of the rifle, made it top heavy. So I swapped the lamb for a simple, lightweight reflex sight. This returns the 1x capability to the optic stack, something that was admittedly sorely missing from the Civil Defense SPR in the original iteration. This setup, a 2-12-ish scope with a red dot, is the current SPR scope stack meta. And I see why. You get a solid 1x from your red dot for short range and night vision performance, and then, on top of that, you get 2x through 12x magnification on your scope for medium to long range engagements. It's not that simple though, and it's not all upside. Having 2 optics is heavier and not very intuitive. Your red dot is going to be in an uncomfortable position. It's more of a chin weld than a cheek weld. Also, it requires a lot of training to build the mental and muscle memory required for two separate optics. Anyway, in terms of this red dot, on here I have a Primary Arms RS10R, which is basically Primary Arms RMR clone. It's not the best dot in the entire world, but it has a robust form factor, a few night vision settings, and it's made by a company known for making high quality, affordable optics. I'll take it. I did have to add a spacer to rise it up to the correct position just above the turret, but now it's right where I want it. If there are any downsides to this Reflex sight, I did notice that it has a lot of parallax, but only on the upper portion of the window. Once you approach that upper arch, the position of your eye does affect accuracy quite a bit. On my original Civil Defense SPR build, I used one of KE Arms aluminum free float handguards. And to be fair, it was perfectly serviceable. But the truth is, it was a big chungus. It made the upper unnecessarily chunky, and I just didn't like the feel of that grip all that much. So one upgrade I made at some point last year was replacing it with a cheap Foxtrot mic handguard that I got for under $100. Nothing special here, just a typical M-LOK handguard with a full Picatinny top rail. Lightweight, low profile, and much closer to my preferences. And as you can see, on the handguard, I have my SMS Laser HFXC laser aiming module secured to the Picatinny rail. I like simplicity in all things, especially my rifles, so I hate dealing with wires and buttons as part of my light and laser setup. So while most people would put their LAM all the way forward on their handguard and then mount a tape switch somewhere behind it, I decided to drop the LAM back a few slots, say fuck the tape switch, and use the on-unit fire button only. I was worried that the handguard would block the white light, but it's really not very noticeable, at least not when you're using this thing in a fast environment, either in competition or out LARPing in the woods. One thing I will say about the HFXC, and I think I brought this up in my first video, but I feel like I need to say it again, it's not waterproof. In practice, I would say that it's something more like water resistant. It can handle soft rain, but things get a little dicey if you're in an extended downpour, or if you accidentally dunk the entire unit in a puddle for more than a second or two. So I'm using the HFXC for now, but it has shortcomings, and I'm looking forward to a future 4-in-1 LAM from SMS Laser, or anyone else for that matter, that does have a waterproof rating. I'd also be happy with a surefire vampire clone of some kind. Skip the IR laser, just rely on the RS10R for passive aiming with the assistance of the IR illuminator. But a good vampire clone doesn't exist at the time of filming. Alas, maybe next year. Another change I made to my Civil Defense SPR was changing out the MDT Oryx bipod for a Magpul bipod. Last year, I desperately wanted to not recommend the Magpul bipod, because I don't like it. It's one of my least favorite Magpul products. So I recommended the MDT Oryx bipod instead. And there is a lot to like about that bipod. The same weight as the Magpul, same price, but it's much more solid, way less play and slop. But there were downsides too. It's really wide, even when the legs are fully stowed. And having that wide bipod on the wide handguard, the whole thing just felt very spread out, very loose for lack of a better term. By switching to the narrower Foxtrot mic handguard and the more compact Magpul bipod, the whole upper feels more dense and compact. Altogether, the whole thing just feels more ergonomic and shootable in my hands. And I might just be a wuss, but the Oryx bipod was kind of difficult to return the legs forward to the stowed away position. So despite the Magpul bipod having a lot of slop if you play with it in your hands, it's pretty ergonomic. It's easy to deploy and then stow again. And even with the slop, most of the time in the real world, if you just push forward on your rifle, you can create a solid prone shooting position with it. Another change I made to this rifle is one that you can't see. I changed the buffer weight from an H1 to an H2 buffer. This really improved the whole action of the rifle. Before, the rifle felt kind of snappy when you shot it. Now, it feels like a heavy but padded thud. And you should see from the footage, but the ejection pattern is perfect. It's ejecting cases at 2:30 to 3 o'clock every single time. And last thing, sling. Last year, I had a blue force gear padded Vickers sling on my Civil Defense SPR. And that is a really good sling, but it's also expensive. And the whole point of the Civil Defense SPR is getting high quality without spending unnecessary money. So this year, I'm recommending the Magpul sling. I think it's called the MS1. It has a nice quick adjust buckle that works really well, even without a pull tab. And it's only $40 brand new. What I like about this sling is that it relies on width for comfort, instead of relying on padding. It spreads the load across more real estate on your shoulder, which really helps reduce strain and soreness and discomfort after long days walking in your kit. And I don't know what kind of fiber this webbing is made out of, but it's super comfortable to the touch. Pair this adjustable Magpul sling with some generic QDs from your chosen online retailer, and you have a comfortable, adjustable sling for half the cost of the Vickers. Before I wrap up, I'm going to quickly touch on the parts of the build that stayed the same. The parts that did fulfill their job perfectly. I'm going to try to zip past this stuff quickly since I went over most of it in the first Civil Defense SPR video from last year. First, the 18-inch Criterion core barrel. 1,500 rounds later, no loss of accuracy, as expected. Then, the trigger, the MBT 2S flat-face trigger. Still crisp as fuck for $100. I use these in all of my AR-15s. As you can see, I kept the KE Arms polymer lower receiver. Now this saves weight over a traditional lower with a separate stock, buffer tube, grip, and everything. It's common on lightweight builds for this reason. Now last year, some people reached out to share a video of a few guys who had issues with their KP-15 lowers in extreme low temperatures. Where I live in the mid-Atlantic, I've taken this rifle out to around 15 or 20 degrees. Now I definitely don't deny their experience, but I haven't personally run into any issues yet. So until I run into issues, I'm going to keep it on my Civil Defense SPR. One thing I kept the same on this rifle is not putting a suppressor on it. An 18-inch barrel is relatively long as a starting point. A suppressor would make it unwieldy, like an AR with a 24-inch barrel. Suppressors add a lot of weight at the worst place of the rifle, the very front. So in my opinion, for the Civil Defense SPR, the A2 birdcage is still the way to go. Now as far as the bolt carrier group, again, no issues. I got this one from Brownells, but it's definitely white labeled from Toolcraft or another major manufacturer. I'll keep you updated if I run into any issues. Now the gas block and gas tube were from Aero Precision. Again, no issues, but I'm not sure how much this will help you in the future because it seems like Aero might not be around much longer. Hey guys, I'm dropping in here again because I feel like I didn't get this point across in the early version of the script. The rifle I have here, the parts that affect accuracy and reliability, the trigger, the barrel, the bolt carrier group, all that stuff stayed the same. Accuracy-wise, this rifle shoots identical to how it did last year. The only thing I changed that affects the rifle's action at all is the switch to an H2 buffer. Everything else is just improving ergonomics, balance, or optic quality. So all this is to say, the Civil Defense SPR was 90% there when I made the first video overview last year. It's pretty much the same rifle you're looking at today, but the last 10%, the little things, these have a major impact on our last topic, the shootability of your AR-15. Now that we've gone over all the details, let's take a step back and look at the big picture. At the end of my first Civil Defense SPR video, I did a whole section on rifle shootability. In other words, how all the soft factors, like weight, balance, and ergonomics, result in how comfortable and effective your rifle is in real-world dynamic environments. And though the original Civil Defense SPR was quite shootable at sub 10 pounds, I can't deny that it was top-heavy, securing the laser aiming module above the scope threw the rifle off balance. Not terribly so, but enough to impact shootability. Moving the lam down to a more conventional position on the handguard did add weight near the front of the gun, which normally we don't like. But in this case, it was worth it to fix the balance problem. This also freed us up to add a small reflex sight piggybacked above the scope, giving us a 1x solution for the optic stack and passive night vision aiming capability. The result is a rifle much closer to the current gun tube and Reddit SPR meta. A 2 to 12-ish scope with a piggyback dot, and a laser aiming module near the muzzle. Still affordable, still lightweight, and importantly, even more shootable than before. Sometimes the conventional wisdom is the conventional wisdom for a reason. If you stuck around until now, thank you. If you'd like to support this channel, please follow the link in this video description to the Black Flag Civilian Subscribe Star page. Any level of support gets you into the BFC Discord server, where we have a mixture of casual community, gear talk, and also serious defense and preparedness education going on. Until next time, take care of each other. Miso. Miso, do not show your butt to YouTube. Good girl.